In the last video, we talked about 2D wave behaviors. We talked about reflection, diffraction, refraction, and interference. And so today we're going to go through 2D wave interference a little bit more in depth, but not a lot more. If you look through the notes book that's attached to this section, you'll see that it's pretty long. It goes in depth into how antinodes and nodes form and talks about difference in path length. We're kind of going to ignore all of that stuff and just look at how the pattern that we saw emerges. So let's take a look at that right now. So let's look right in the middle over here. This source and this source are both creating ripples, and those ripples are interfering with one another. Let's look at source 1 to start off with. These dotted lines, dotted circles, are troughs, and the dark lines, or the solid lines, those are crests. So here's a trough, crest, trough, crest, trough, crest, etc., moving outwards. The same thing is happening from source 2. And those crests and troughs are interfering with one another and making a specific pattern that we saw last time. So let's look right in between the two over here at this spot. So notice that this is a crest from 1, or from source number 2, and this is a crest from source number 1. And at this spot, they are both crests. And when you get two crests, you get a taller crest. They add together. Constructive interference. If we look forward over here, you get a trough and a trough. They make a double deep trough, right? A trough and a trough add together and get even deeper. And so this is also constructive interference over here. It's a constructive trough instead of a crest. So we're going to mark this with a green dot as well, because it's constructive. If we look up here, crest and crest, that's constructive. Trough and trough is constructive. Crest and crest, trough and trough, crest and crest. So you see a line emerging over here. This is an antinodal line. Antinodes because you get big crests and deep troughs, and those would be called antinodes. Remember that nodes are places of little movement or no movement at all, really, and antinodes are places of maximum movement. Okay, so now I'm going to fill in the rest of these antinode spots really quickly. Do you see the pattern? We get a line straight up the middle. We get another line coming out this direction, another line, and another line. And if you look back at the previous video, you'll see what we saw was lines, antinodal lines, and then nodal lines in between them. Now let's quickly fill in the rest of these things. There's the pattern. So those are all antinodal lines. We've got a line going straight up the middle, like this. We've got another set of lines like this, another set of lines, and another set of lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we've got 7 lines. The middle one is antinodal line 0. 1, 2, 3 on either side. 1, 2, 3 on either side. Okay, now let's take a look at where the nodes are. So if we look in the middle here again, we're looking for where a crest and a trough are meeting. And we see one of those right here. We've got a crest from S1 and a trough from S2, and a crest and a trough will be destructive superposition or destructive interference. There's a point, there's a point, there's a point. And so now we're going to start filling in the nodal lines. So let's look at this one to start off with and move forward. Here is another node, crest and trough, crest and trough, crest and trough, crest and trough, crest and trough. And so now you see that nodal line forming over here. Now I'm going to fill in all the rest of those really quickly as well. There you go. There are all the nodes. Beautiful, isn't it? It's like Christmas. So I want to draw some lines here because this is a pattern, but I want to make sure that you see where all the lines that we saw were, because we talked about antinodal lines and nodal lines. So if I can draw a straight line here, there's the central antinodal line. There's the next one. The next one. And the next one. Now let's fill in the rest of them. There are all the antinodal lines. Now let's fill in the nodal lines. And there's your completed pattern. So the antinodal lines come up because you get constructive interference along that whole line. You get crests meeting crests and troughs meeting troughs, and it happens to be that they all meet in a single line. Then, right beside it, you get crests and troughs meeting, and so you get destructive interference, and that happens to be all in a single line as well. And that alternates side to side until you get this pattern emerging. So that's where the 2D wave interference pattern comes from.